Hello, everyone, and welcome to Weekend Chat with AM and TK.
That's right. Welcome back. We haven't seen you in a couple of weeks. We were on a bit of a hiatus, but we are now here again, ready to continue the conversation. Speaking of which, a very important conversation happening around the world has surfaced with the killing of George Floyd, and we know that all of you have probably been following this quite closely, as have we. It's a very important topic to us and something that we really agree, both of us, that needs to be talked about, and the conversation needs to be kept moving forward. And in that spirit, as we all know, a lot of protests happening around the world, but also business leaders and companies coming forward and making statements. On Shoes comes to mind, actually. They posted a very poignant Instagram post saying, "Today we don't run, we stand," and said that they know the stakes are high, but not enough to avoid standing in solidarity. So really a lot of important messages being put out there, as well as CEOs. No, Tanya?
Yes, that's right. So we got a lot of emails by CEOs, and one email that struck me was the one by CEO of Issue, Joe Herken, who actually said that we should not just remember the protest, but we should actually take this moment now to turn it into action. So it's not enough to be outraged and to be horrified, and to actually take this moment and to fight racism, injustice, and inequality. And that's something I thought was important because I was so outraged or horrified by it. But what do you do with that then? And there are a few things that we can do. Just to mention a few out there, it's important that we point out injustice whenever we see them. I think one thing, sometimes when people are treated in an unjust way, they are getting used to be treated like that. So they sometimes won't speak up. And so if you're in a position where you see it's happening and the person is not defending itself, you can also step in and help, because often they think, well, it happens to me all the time, I'm already used to it, what shall I do? So I think that is an important step. Then also speak out when someone in your circle is being racist. You can also donate to charities, as On Shoes, as you mentioned, did, or other charities that are trying to close the gap, like Black Girls Code. There are many more that you find online. And then one thing that the CNN article mentioned was to avoid microaggressions, avoid saying things like, "Oh, you're so well spoken, you don't sound Black." Things like that don't seem it's aggressive, but actually it is. So here are a few things that can be done, and we all should just try to fight racism every day.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's being done, as we said, all over the world. Hollywood is also doing their bit to talk about it and hopefully start changing some of the images that they're putting out there. And speaking of film, cinemas are reopening here in Switzerland and also around the world. So all the moviegoers excited, I hope, to get back out in front of the big screen. And we'll get to see movies that were put on hold a bit with the whole pandemic. And I think, actually, Tanya, you have a movie that you did an interview for last year, maybe even, or months ago.
That's right, Anna Maria. So one of the movies that is being released now in Swiss cinemas is Suicide Tourist by Danish director Jonas Alexander Arnby. And I've interviewed him and the star of the movie, who is Game of Thrones actor Nikolaj Coster-Waldau, who plays Jamie. And I've interviewed him last year at the Zurich Film Festival, where they presented the movie, but only now it is in Swiss cinemas. So let's take a listen. You're releasing your second feature film, Suicide Tourist, and you were able to get Nikolaj on board, such a world-famous actor for Game of Thrones. How did you convince him? I guess it was not the paycheck.
Paycheck? No. Actually, I mean, Nikolaj was. I wanted at least Nikolaj to play this role from the very beginning. So I got him on board pretty early by sending the script.
Well, actually, it was Barbara.
No, actually, that's right. Sorry, you're right. Yeah,
Who's
actually, you're right.
Barbara?
Barbara Muschetti.
Oh, yeah.
I was working with Barbara and Andy Muschetti, the director and producers. They did a movie called Mama. They just did It
sorry.
and It Too. And they are friends with him.
Yeah, I met
so I got
him.
an email from Barbara saying you should
That's right.
meet Jonas. So
Right,
that's
yeah.
how it worked.
Why such a small movie and not another, Hollywood blockbuster?
I liked the story. I thought it was an interesting. I loved the idea, the dilemma of the character, a guy who is so who wants to live and he wants his love, but he's so afraid of the unknown future that he decides to choose the most extreme, choose death. And I like the idea to tell a story that is 100% from his point of view. That you never know what's real and what's in his mind, and towards the end you realize, well, this is getting really surreal, and maybe you understand as an audience, hey, this can't be, this must be something else. I loved that, but it was, as you said, it was easy in the beginning, and then of course we got closer, and then I started questioning everything, which I had to, because it is a complex story, and I had to find my way and understand why is it real here, is it not real? Because I guess in some ways I like to be in control, and so the idea of letting loose, letting go of control is something that I can relate to.
I guess your name is of quite a big value after Game of Thrones. Is this also a way of helping the film industry in your home country,
I
Denmark?
wish I could say I was such a saint, but no. This is all very. I just like this story, and I don't worry about it being a small film, or Danish or American. I try to. I'm very lucky being able to work both places, and yes, it's great that Game of Thrones has afforded me that luxury, and it also makes sometimes a movie like this easier to get made, because you can gain some interest, or you can sit down and suddenly we talk to you now, which is fantastic.
Was it easier to finance this movie because such a big name, because you already have the attention?
Of course, it helps with Nikolaj because he's such a big name. So of course, as Nikolaj is saying, it creates a certain interest, but. Yeah, it was. I mean, it's always difficult because the idea is. I mean, even though the idea is universal and it has, it's still a film that is, how do you say? It's not a Gone in 60 Seconds kind of movie. It comes with a different audience. It might be a smaller audience. So you have to have people who has a filmic interest in these kinds of films to finance this project.
The topic of suicide tourists is euthanasia, and in Switzerland it's legally allowed to do that. So I was wondering, did you look into Switzerland when you were doing your research?
It's funny because we've talked about it, but coming here to Switzerland, of course, it has a whole different meaning, and we've shown the movie other places. We haven't had this discussion because for us it was never about a movie about assisted suicide. It's not a realist drama like that. When he goes to this crazy hotel at the top of the mountain where people reenact whatever fantasy you can make up, it's not necessarily a real place. So I don't want to pass, it's not a pro or against assisted suicide.
We're using, the assisted suicide, the suicide hotel as a dramatic tool to tell his story or this story. So hopefully, the audience feels the same. I mean, yeah.
You're also very outspoken about gender equality.
Yes.
What opened your eyes for the still existing inequality?
Well, I don't think I'm a goodwill ambassador for the UNDP, and I think the just reading the statistics and the numbers kind of shocked me. I always knew that gender inequality was an issue, but then when you look at the numbers on a global scale, it's mind-boggling, and clearly something that we have to deal with.
So other things also going back to normal outside of cinemas, we've got schools kicking into full normal programming as of next week. But there are some institutions that are still relying a bit on the virtual aspect. And for example, the Culinary Arts Academy of Switzerland is hosting their first ever virtual culinary competition. Now, if that sounds a little conflicted to you, then you're not alone, because that's actually the first question I asked Tanya Florenthal, who's the dean at the academy, how to marry this idea of a cooking contest with the virtual factor. All right, so Cook and Battle is set for this weekend, a virtual cooking contest. Now, I mean, forgive me if I'm missing something, but isn't a big part of judging a cooking contest being able to taste and smell the dishes? I mean, how are you going to deal with that?
Well, that's the creative part, right? That's the interesting part about the cooking, the virtual cooking battle. And I like to say that, for example, Beethoven was deaf, right? But he still composed his masterpiece while being impaired. So what we want to see in our students preparing for the cooking battle is creativity, is presentation skills, is how you present yourself. Because when you go to a restaurant, tasting is obviously a big part of what the overall experience will be, but still there's a whole aspect of how you're greeted at the restaurant. How are there fresh flowers or not? Is there an ambience music? So all of this is also part of the experience. And in the virtual cooking battle, what we want to see is that creativity, is the innovation skills. And I want to say also that the juries that we have, even they cannot taste it, they will be able to feel it. Like they are such experts in their fields. And that's also what makes the competition a little bit unique, I guess.
Obviously, she couldn't talk to me about a front runner. She has 7 front runners, the 7 finalists. So no favorites out on the table, but whoever wins will get some scholarship money to continue their education. And as she pointed out, they will have the opportunity to be mentored by top world chefs. So it sounds like a win-win no matter what happens on Saturday, Tanya.